Bedridden with a high fever, I couldn't even lift a finger. Desperate for just a sip of water, I turned to my eldest son for help. However, to my dismay, he returned not with water, but with a glass brimming with beer. As the beer splashed over me while I lay in bed with a raging fever, I heard laughter echoing from the doorway. It was my son's wife, clapping and giggling alongside my eldest son, who held the empty cup. Despite my feverish haze, the scene etched itself vividly into my mind. "Clean the house by the time we get back, huh?" I could hardly believe their audacity. I had endured Luke and his wife's selfishness until now, but this was too much to bear. "Yes, I will clean it," I managed to say through the pain in my throat, ensuring my son and his wife heard me loud and clear. My name is Mabel, a 73-year-old housewife. My husband, Dylan, aged 75, spends his retirement teaching calligraphy to children at a nearby community center. While he pursued his dream, I supported him with a smile every day. We have 2 sons, the younger one is married with 2 young children. However, our eldest son, aged 44, remains unmarried and living with us. Despite working part-time at a convenience store, he contributes nothing to the household. My husband and I had warned him countless times, but our words fell on deaf ears. Then, out of nowhere, he announced he got married and brought his wife home without so much as a greeting. From that day on, I found myself not only cooking for my son but also for his wife, who showed no gratitude and made unreasonable demands. Even when my husband intervened, their behavior persisted, with my son defending his wife's selfishness. Despite my growing frustration, I hesitated to confront my husband, fearing it would strain our relationship. So, I endured a little longer, hoping for change. Once again, I found myself holding back, complying with my daughter-in-law's request to take her clothes to the cleaners. My husband and I usually make 2 trips a year to visit our second son's family in Canada, particularly during the week-long federal holiday. Our frequent visits have fostered a deep bond with our grandchildren, who eagerly await our arrival. Already, we've purchased their favorite toys as gifts, planning to pick up a roll cake as a souvenir along the way. Excitement bubbled within me the day before our visit as I went shopping after seeing my husband off to his calligraphy class. Along the way, I stopped by a cake shop, opting for handmade cookies that would endure longer than a cake. Imagining the joy on our grandchildren's faces, I hastened home, but the drizzle soon turned into a heavy rain. Arriving home drenched, I debated waiting out the downpour at a convenience store. However, desiring the comfort of a warm bath to ease my chilled body, I purchased an umbrella and hurried home. Yet, as I prepared for a bath, my eldest son's wife barged in, claiming the need to use the bathroom urgently. Despite it not being her house, she demanded I start dinner early and shut the door behind her. Sneezing as I prepared dinner, I feared falling ill just before our departure the next day. Unbeknownst to me, my son's wife lingered in the bath for over an hour. Waking the next morning, the day of our planned visit to our second son's family, I felt sluggish and unwell. My temperature confirmed my fears, 100 degrees Fahrenheit, a clear sign of catching a cold in yesterday's rain. Reluctantly, I insisted Dylan go alone this time, fearing I might pass on the cold to our grandchildren. Despite his concern, I urged him to proceed, assuring him it was only a slight fever and a minor cold. I anticipated feeling better after taking some medicine and resting at home. Dylan, who typically doesn't engage much with our eldest son and his wife, informed them of my condition before leaving, asking them to take care of the household chores in his absence. As I bid farewell to Dylan with a smile and prepared to return to bed, I overheard my eldest son and his wife conversing. Their remarks shocked me. "What a bother, it's just a cold. But now that Dad's gone, we can relax for a bit," they remarked. I couldn't fathom their attitude, considering they lived in our home without contributing financially, but sadly, it wasn't unexpected. When I pointed out that they only had their comforts because of Dylan, Luke and his wife seemed offended, insisting that they were doing us a favor by staying with us in our old age. It was absurd, especially considering they had moved in without invitation and acted as if they were doing us a favor. Despite feeling unwell and wanting to rest early, I tried to ignore their remarks and retreated to my room. However, my daughter-in-law barged in, urging me not to neglect cooking just because I was feeling sick. It was inappropriate for a 35-year-old to rely on her mother-in-law for cooking. Despite my sickness, I insisted they fend for themselves for dinner, a responsibility my husband should have reminded them of before leaving. Despite my efforts to rest, my daughter-in-law persisted, forcing me to get up and prepare a light meal. Luke returned home but didn't acknowledge my presence in the kitchen. Instead, he demanded to know why the bath wasn't ready yet. Their disregard for my illness was apparent, but I pushed through, finishing the meal and then preparing the bath. Returning to the living room, I found Luke and his wife excitedly discussing an upcoming trip abroad, completely oblivious to my discomfort. They revealed plans for a 3-week trip to Europe, a surprise to me as I hadn't heard anything about it beforehand. I felt relieved knowing they would be away, starting from the day after tomorrow. On the morning Luke and his wife were set to depart for their trip, my condition had deteriorated to the point where I couldn't even leave my bed. When I checked my temperature, it was nearly 103 degrees Fahrenheit. Thirsty but unable to lift my head due to a pounding headache, I was in a sorry state when Luke approached me. "Hey, cook us some food. You can still cook even if you have a cold," he said, oblivious to my condition. Tears welled up in my eyes at the sight of my son telling his sick mother to cook. "Order food," I managed to say weakly. Luke frowned but left without a word. Before he exited the room, I asked him to bring me a glass of water, hoping he would at least do that much for me. However, when Luke returned, he brought a glass full of beer and splashed it all over me as I lay bedridden with a high fever. From the doorway, the loud laughter of my eldest son's wife echoed, accompanied by her clapping hands in amusement. Beside her, my son Luke was also laughing, holding an empty cup. It was an unbelievable sight, etched into my memory despite my feverish state. "Make sure you clean the house before we get back," my son's wife mocked, before they cheerfully left the house. I mustered the strength to respond, vowing to keep it clean despite the pain in my throat. Exhausted, I fell asleep without even wiping the beer-soaked mess from my face. When I woke up, I felt somewhat refreshed, albeit groggy. Surprisingly, I didn't feel sticky at all, and the covers on my bed had been changed. Puzzled, I was met by my husband Dylan, who entered the room with a basin. Concerned, he asked, "Are you okay?" I was taken aback. Wasn't he supposed to be with our second son's family? I tried to voice my confusion, but couldn't. Sensing my bewilderment, Dylan explained that he had returned early upon realizing my deteriorating condition. Untrusting of Luke and his wife to care for me, he had cut short his visit and flown back home, urged by our second son's family. When Dylan returned, he discovered me lying exhausted in bed, with a lingering smell of beer in the air. Quickly, he cleaned my face with a damp towel, tidied up the area, and cared for me while I slept for a full day. When he asked me what had happened, I tried to explain, but my voice failed me. The memory of being splashed with beer by Luke brought tears to my eyes. Seeing this, Dylan brought me some water and apologized, saying, "Sorry, I shouldn't have asked you. Just rest for now." He then went to prepare some porridge, having thoughtfully prepared it in advance so it would be ready whenever I woke up. Dylan's kindness brought tears to my eyes again, and thanks to his care, I regained my energy in about 2 days. When I told Dylan about Luke and his wife's actions while he was away, his expression turned stern. "I can't stand it anymore," he muttered. I, too, felt unable to pacify him as I had done before because I couldn't forgive them myself. In fact, Dylan and I had secretly been planning to build a new house without informing our eldest son and his wife. Although the new house wasn't finished yet, we had already moved into a monthly rental apartment and sold our house, shocking them with the news. We had been approached by someone interested in buying our land to build a shop, which facilitated the quick sale. Initially, we had intended to keep the old house for our eldest son and his wife, but after the way they treated us, there was no need to consider them anymore. The property had already been turned into an empty lot, leaving them undoubtedly shocked to find the house gone. The new house would be completed in about 2 weeks, thanks to a kind contractor who allowed us to store our historic belongings and furniture there in advance after we explained the situation. When we informed our eldest son and his wife about our plans, our son shouted, "Are you kidding me? I'll report you to the police." At that moment, with his wife yelling in the background, my husband, Dylan, took over the phone, and I switched it to speaker mode. In a low voice, he addressed our son, saying, "Go ahead, tell the police. I'll tell them too. You guys threw beer at your sick mother and then went on a vacation abroad, even forcing her to do housework while she was sick. Who do you guys think is the bigger sinner? You guys are, not us, for disposing of your things." My husband's expression as he spoke to our eldest son resembled that of a villain. Ignoring Dylan's words, our son continued to protest, "This has nothing to do with that. In selling the house, where are we supposed to live? Where are you guys even staying?" Dylan firmly responded, "That house was originally ours. It's our right to sell it. Plus, you're no longer our son. Don't contact us anymore," before hanging up. 2 weeks later, we received a call informing us that our new house was completed. Excitedly, Dylan and I headed over. The call was from the carpenter, a friend of Dylan's, who served as the site supervisor. He showed us around the house, explaining the layout. Designed as a single-story accessible house with our future retirement in mind, it exceeded our expectations in beauty. Grateful, we thanked the carpenters, who left, saying, "Georgia really helped us out back in the day, so this is nothing." So, Dylan and I began living in our new house. It was even more comfortable than we had imagined, and our life was peaceful without our eldest son and his wife around. However, about a month after moving in, our eldest son and his wife unexpectedly showed up. Neither Dylan nor I had disclosed our address to them, and our younger son, Luke, and his wife shouldn't have either. They probably hired a detective to find us. Asserting his rights, our son declared, "Hey, it's not fair for you to sell the house, dispose of our stuff, and then move to such a nice place by yourselves. As your eldest son, I have the right to live here, don't I?" With large bags in their hands, they seemed determined to move in. Just then, Dylan and I were taken aback as our neighbors approached from the back of the house. "What are you guys here for? To what end? After taking our living place, how dare you ask such a thing?" Dylan exclaimed. But our son remained defiant, stating, "From today, we're living here too." As they prepared to step in, the front door opened. "Hey, Luke, what are you doing here? Are you here to cause trouble again? Come on, you're old enough to take care of yourself," Leon said with a surprised look on his face. Beside him were his wife and their 2 grandchildren. They had come to visit because the new house had just been finished. After chilling at home for a bit, Leon's family went to a nearby store. "Who are they? Are they mean people?" the 5th grader Layla asked innocently. Suddenly, Leon, who was about to ask Luke and his wife to leave, got an idea. "While Jasper's family is staying for a week, you two should also stay here." "But I won't let you stay forever," he said, welcoming everyone into the house. As they gathered in the living room, Luke and his wife sat on the sofa. "Phew, I'm tired. Can I have some coffee, mother-in-law?" "I like it black," Luke requested casually. Leon's wife was surprised by Luke and his wife's easygoing request. Then the grandchildren approached Luke and his wife. "Why can't you do things yourselves? Even I, a kid, can pour my own juice," one of them said. The innocent remarks of the grandchildren made Luke's wife uncomfortable, so she went to pour her own coffee. But the grandchildren's questions continued. "Why can't you cook or clean up after yourself?" "My mom and dad always do," they said. The grandchildren, who were raised well by Leon's wife, were responsible and often helped her. Leon also worked alongside his wife, so it was confusing for the grandchildren to see Luke and his wife doing nothing. Initially, Luke and his wife argued back, but the questions kept coming. By the end of the week, they were exhausted. Luke's wife especially didn't like being called Auntie. "Don't call me Auntie," she said earnestly. But when the grandchildren asked why not, saying she wasn't young enough to be called sister, she was shocked. Even Leon and I, who were listening nearby, couldn't help but laugh. After Jasper and his wife left, we asked Luke and his wife to leave too. They were tired from the children's constant questions, so they left without much fuss. However, a few months later, we received a message asking, "Can you lend us some money?" Until then, they had been staying in our home, eating our food without paying. Since Luke, our oldest son, was making enough money from his job at the convenience store to cover all expenses, it wasn't a problem. After being evicted from our home, Luke and his wife were expected to take responsibility for their own expenses. However, they continued spending money as if nothing had changed, relying on borrowed funds without any savings. Luke's sole income came from his part-time job at a convenience store, while his wife showed no interest in finding work. Given their circumstances, it was bold of them to ask for financial assistance. "We will never lend you money again, nor will we offer any help," we firmly told them before blocking Luke's number. A few days later, while my husband and I were away, we received a call from our home security company. Luke and his wife had attempted to break into our house through a window. It was pitiful to see them resort to such measures out of desperation. Though they were swiftly apprehended by security and later released by the police, they received a harsh reprimand. Since then, they have ceased their attempts to intrude into our home. We've blocked their calls, ensuring we have no further contact with them. According to our second son, Leon, Luke even asked him for money. It appears Luke had borrowed money from loan sharks and was now on the run due to his inability to repay it. "You brought this upon yourself, deal with your own debts," Leon firmly responded before blocking Luke's number as well. As for us, we've chosen to move on from those who would pour beer over a sick person. My husband now teaches calligraphy classes from our home, providing a peaceful environment for learning and creativity. When Jasper and his family visit, the grandchildren and other children enjoy calligraphy classes together, forging friendships and creating memories. We are grateful for these tranquil days and cherish each moment.